Well, welcome to another Mark Bishop show. A very interesting lady as my guest this time. In fact, she's president of a leadership consulting firm and was born and raised in the Pacific Northwest US, beautiful part of the country. Her father was a vocal music teacher, mother, an artist, and with a bachelor's degree in theater and a master's in organizational leadership, Marie has worked in non-profit organizations, an international investment firm, leadership development companies, even a coffee company. So I'd like to welcome Marie Tjernlund. Welcome, Marie.
Thank you so much, Mark. I'm thrilled to be here.
Oh, it's lovely to have you. Tjernlund, interesting name, Swedish?
Completely, yes.
Okay.
What's interesting, I guess, is my family, as I was mentioning earlier, when my great ancestors landed in New York City, the Tjernlund, which I think sounds actually quite delightful, was Americanized a bit. But the TJ is a great way to open up conversation. So I love my last name.
I love travel, so consequently, I love different countries and therefore surnames and people from and histories thereof. So there you go. Now, research shows me, Marie, that quite frankly, no matter what department or position you started in, be it marketing director, administrator, L&D manager, corporate tour guide, you inevitably ended up teaching, coaching, mentoring, or building bridges, basically encouraging people to engage with each other, but with authenticity, compassion, and curiosity. So, where did all this come from, may I ask?
What a sweet question. A lot of it has to do just with how I interpret the world. I think I have an insatiable curiosity about why things work, how people interact. And plus, I'm just excited about life. So, as you can imagine, from a very early age, I'm always asking questions like, how did this happen? Or what do we do over here? And then what do I do with that? I turn it around. I want to show people, hey, did you know this? So I think my joy is really about connecting with people, helping them see they can have a marvelous life. You just got to ask the right questions and have the right conversations.
Hmm. Well, the journey has led you to be president of Noble Edge, a leadership consulting firm. You're based in Gig Harbor, Washington, right?
We are just outside of Seattle. Beautiful country.
Yeah. And your main skills are used which way in this role?
Well, actually, I provide program consulting, one-on-one executive coaching, kind of falls underneath the umbrella of leadership skills training. I often describe the differences in how we work in our company is that we can provide the large scope, 30,000 foot level consulting, like what can we do to help your company thrive? I'm the person that walks in the front door and said, okay, let's talk person to person and really make it happen. So I love my job. I love what I get to do.
Ah, by the sounds of it, that's great. I mean, to be inquisitive, Marie, we're all familiar, with competitive edge and the cutting edge, the leading edge.
Mhm.
And here we go with a company called Noble Edge. I mean, why that name? How did you come about that?
It was really a way of, we wanted to be able to express that business isn't the buildings. In fact, people aren't an organization. I mean, the buildings aren't the organization, the people are. And so the nobility and bringing in the humanity into our business conversations and our business occupations, it's really the core of our business. How do we keep it from feeling very external to now connecting person to person and helping the individual and the organizations thrive? So the nobility part, I think, is really at the core because we value people so highly. We really love working with our clients.
Hmm. Well, you're obviously committed to providing leadership development training. So does this focus on, obviously ethics, trustworthiness? I guess all of that relates to healthy relationships, yes?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, when you think about what really matters in our lives is having to do with relationships. And how do you have healthy relationships? Well, you have to build them on a foundation of trust. And so trustworthiness becomes the driver for good ethical moral behavior, having healthy, authentic relationships, speaking our truth to each other, not being afraid to be authentically who we are. So the more that we can strip away the things that get in our way, that's really how we can bring forth an organization and a relationship that makes everybody thrive. So that's really the foundation. And what's marvelous is that our executive team here at Noble Edge, I hate to say this because it makes me sound old, but between all of us, we have over 50 years of combined experience working with leaders all around the globe, finding solutions that really help them, increase their self-awareness, remove those internal barriers, and really support both the personal and the professional empowerment.
Well, it sounds wonderful stuff. I mean, there's a lot of people who say, look, if you let me in, I can really fix your company up. I can change things. I can, bring people together, this, that. What makes, your program
Mhm.
so unique? What is it that you can get to the core of getting people to work together?
Yeah, great question. I think thinking back in terms of there's a lot of talking these days about why people do business. And I think ultimately organizations and individuals are attracted to why companies exist. So why is Noble Edge here? Well, we're here to help people be authentic and build good relationships. And so everything we do, whether it's the one-on-one executive coaching or it's the leadership skills workshops that we do, or even the strategic planning, it always comes down to how can we help people have stronger, healthy relationships? And that does translate into great financial um, success in organizations. But ultimately, again, it's helping people see that they have a better life. It's not about generating money. It's about making a difference in the world. And I think people want to do business with Noble Edge because we see that is our core vision. We want to make a difference, we want a positive difference that well extends after we're all gone off this planet.
Hmm.
But part of that is about really approaching it differently. We don't offer services, we offer relationships.
Yeah, well, you make it sound like, you know, it's a winner from a point of view of, I mean, when you talk about, individual CEOs and leaders of the companies, it's a bit different if you're dealing with all of the staff, is it, versus just one off with them, or do you need to do them and the staff, or how does that work?
Yeah, what a great question. You can't integrate organizational change unless the leadership is in charge and they are fully behind this because people want to see their leaders model the behavior that creates the culture of the organization. So I've unfortunately worked with leaders who are like, yeah, can you fix my people? I'm fine. And you realize,
Right.
um, I think that's the core conversation we need to have is about how you view yourself as a leader. Um, with all transparency, I will say I'm a strong proponent of servant leadership, where the leaders see them as their job is to remove the barriers and allow their people to thrive. So it's more or less if you can get the leaders to see that transformational way of acting and behaving, and words and actions are together,
Hmm.
the rest all falls into place.
Well, would it be difficult for you? I mean, do you get this if you go into a firm, you've got it all laid out, planned how you want to go about things, but then when you start talking with staff individually, you get a lot of feedback from them, perhaps that leadership lets them down or,
Oh, yeah.
isn't really sort of conducive to how they're trying to be?
And unfortunately, that's so very common that there isn't the communication that takes place. People see there's a difference in the public persona of this company is all very lovely, and I walked in the doors and talked with staff who tell me horror stories about what's going on.
Mm, mm.
And a lot of that is leaders being afraid to see the truth. And so one of the questions I usually ask as an executive coach is, what are you pretending not to know right now? Because leaders do know this. It's just more or less, I don't really want to deal with it right now.
Hmm.
But it's a tough question. You have to get past what's the public persona and what's really happening. It's that difference between they talk about ground truth versus the perception of what's really happening.
Right. So these leadership programs and workshops, an awful lot of work. They're all on your website at nobleedgeconsulting.com.
They are. And we don't offer a lot of them, and that's on purpose because we have really tried to highlight what are those key skills that all good leaders should know. And a lot of it factors around communication. How do we help our actions and our words being consistent? How do we build trust? How do we act morally and ethically consistent so that we have good, healthy relationships? So, yes, all of our workshops are there on our website, and we're thrilled to be able to bring them to different clients around the world.
Hmm. Well, if you've just joined us, this is the Mark Bishop Show. Welcome. And I'm speaking with Marie Tjernlund, who is president of one of America's leading consulting firms, a Noble Edge. They're a leadership consulting firm, and they're based in Gig Harbor, Washington. Okay, now I want to ask you this. What's a common misconception about conflict?
Great question, because we've just started actually I shouldn't say just started, we've been launching a new workshop called the U-Turn from conflict to collaboration. And in that we talk about what's the most common misconception about conflict is that it's a bad thing. I think people tend to hold on to saying if you have conflict, it's always bad and you should avoid it at all costs. Well, if you manage conflict productively, and this is skills you can learn, conflict is one of those things that, first of all, it's not good or bad. It just exists. It's just part of our life. And by managing it well, you know what? This is where we get innovation, new ideas, new perspectives. We have something that kind of rubs up against us, causes us to open our eyes and see a different perspective. So we don't teach to avoid at all costs. It's how can you manage it so that it turns around to something that's positive and doesn't damage relationships, but can actually foster greater creativity.
That's wonderful to hear because, there are too many firms. If you open your mouth, you're in deep doo-doo, you know what I mean? You've got a structure and set it up, haven't you, that everybody, without fear of retribution, can be honest and speak from the heart.
Yes. Can you imagine how freeing it would be to be in a conflict with someone else and feel comfortable? Because they're not going to hurt you and you're not out to hurt them. It's simply a time that, wow, I'm suddenly feeling like I need to challenge my assumptions. I need to think about this from another perspective. I think that would be very transforming.
So let me ask you, how do our values then affect our behaviors in a conflict?
Yeah, it's a great question. Our values are really what feed into why we get into conflict with other people. So the more that you can reflect on what do you hold dear to yourself, that can help you in a conflict situation stay more objective. So for example, if I value integrity, someone lying to me would probably be a trigger. It's going to make me, my head's going to get all flushed and I'm going to get all, panicky and feel like, oh my goodness, I can't believe they lied. If I can understand that value in me has been violated, I can then calm myself down. I can also use that to be more compassionate to others. So if someone gets triggered or there's a hot button or they're angry about something, can I be objective enough to say, wait a minute, what do I think they value that's being trampled upon? Can I have a conversation now about that? It can keep us being more present. And again, being more objective, keeping that blood in our brain instead of going into fight or flight.
Marie, tell us more about the U-turn, from conflict to collaboration.
Yes, it's one of our newest workshops. I'm so excited about it. It's all online. It's a 2-day, 6 hours online, very interactive session where people get a chance to take what we call the conflict dynamics profile. And the instrument itself is not a personality test. It's a questionnaire that helps you to see how do you respond in a conflict. And then you can identify those specific skills that you want to strengthen to help you move from that conflict to collaboration. So it identifies different behaviors, your hot buttons. We talk about values. But the workshop is very, very interactive. So people get a chance to not just hear and learn, but to practice it in real time in a safe online environment. But we've seen some tremendous turnarounds from people saying, I didn't know I could say this differently and get a different response.
Okay, so for those interested, perhaps they can just go online to your site and go from there.
Yes, please do. There's a whole write-up. They can get a lot of information, even download the course description itself. So we'd love to talk with people about bringing it into their organization.
And folks, that's nobleedgeconsulting.com. How do you think the pandemic has affected leaders to lead?
So I think first and foremost, it's shattered this myth that, if I can say this nicely, butts in seats equals productivity.
Right.
There was always that sense of if I can see my people, they must be working. And because of the pandemic, people are now working remote. That may continue for quite some time. Leaders are recognizing it's about trustworthiness. Do I trust my people? Because if I don't, and I'm requiring them to be back in the office, that says something about me as a leader. So it's caused a great deal of self-reflection. They have to have better conversations. What does supporting my people mean going forward? Alternative kinds of communication has come into place. So it's challenged the traditional myth that leaders sitting in an office, my people sitting in their seats, is how business works. It doesn't work that way now at all. Very, very different environment.
It's sad in a lot of ways. I miss the grouping together, maybe, in my situation, when I've had specific roles where I did have a lot of staff or key staff managers, I would always mandate, we always had to meet in the pub on Friday nights.
I love that. I love it. Yep. I miss it too. I miss just you're on the way to go get a cup of coffee or tea and you run into a colleague and you have a great conversation about something. So the personal aspect has not changed. Hopefully we're all a lot more grateful now though about those opportunities.
So, what piece of advice would you offer then to a new manager, leader?
Yeah, I think I've always said this too. Hire the best you possibly can and then leave them alone. You hire the best people. They need to tell you how to do their job, not the other way around. I think Steve Jobs was brilliant on this.
Hmm.
Regardless of what you think about him as a leader, he surrounded himself with the best he could find, and then he let them thrive on their own. Tell me what you need to help you do better in your job. More of the people that I talk to, whether it's one-on-one coaching or just as I'm doing workshops, people describe their greatest employers as the people who are constantly asking them, what can I do to help you do better? What can I remove? What can I get out of your way? Instead of watching them to find out what they've done wrong.
Mm.
I think that's really it. I think somehow leaders they feel like they need to babysit their folks. No, they're there to help the organization thrive. But I wish more leaders would understand how trustworthiness, again, falls into that strong suit of saying, I believe you when you say you're working. I don't have to follow up on you. I want
Yeah.
to know what are you doing and how can I help you do it better?
Well, today, don't you, with the working at home whole thing, I mean, there are companies that, through software and artificial intelligence and so on, they know if you're working or not. And you've got
Hmm.
certain KPIs to get to and things that you're doing. So they've got a pretty good idea. How has technology overall, do you think, affected our communication?
That's a great question to ask you because with all of the technology you've been doing as well, I'd love to hear your perspective on this. From my point of view, it's increased the knowledge that we can't just rely on words to communicate, which, let's be honest, words actually are about 7% of communication. The rest is tone and body language. And the more distant we are from each other in this kind of environment these days, it's
Mm.
harder to maintain good communication because things get misunderstood way too easily. A text message or an email can be taken
Oh,
totally the wrong way.
oh, totally. Yes, I'm guilty of that. People
Yeah.
misread me so badly, and yet I try, I try everything in the darn text, including no shortcuts, no use for you. I do the whole word. I do everything that I
Right.
can, but it can be, yeah, totally misunderstood.
Yeah, so I think that's actually one of the hardest parts right now is how do we maintain good communication because the most common outcome of any communication is misunderstandings. So I think that's a challenge these days to leverage communication technology, which is marvelous. But you know what? I think sometimes we forget we actually have a mechanism here. It's on our desk called a telephone. It's a
Hmm.
cell phone. You guys should pick it up and talk like we are right now, which
Yeah,
that's becoming more and more precious. Even something as simple as handwritten notes and letters are now becoming so vital to people. To get a card from someone that's actually signed, because we write emails now.
yeah,
So just
yeah,
see someone's handwriting, that personal touch is becoming so much more important as
that
we
is.
communicate.
So, from your perspective, what are the ABCs of effective leadership?
Yeah, we came up with this not too long ago, actually, probably last year, trying to make it easy when people say, Marie, what do you do? And I said, we teach the ABCs. We teach people to be authentic, to build trust, and to communicate clearly. If every leader, and I believe that everyone in their own way is a leader of their life, and you can have influence on those around you. Think about, are you living authentically? Are you being truly yourself? Are you building trust with those around you by your words and your deeds being in collaboration? And are you communicating clearly? Are you making sure that you're taking the time with people, being patient or learning new skills about how to use vocabulary? I'm a big one against acronyms. I think that's part of where this came out.
Hmm. Hmm.
Acronyms in companies tend to be like code, and we stop using language and we just talk codes all the time. And that doesn't help people feel connected. So yeah, to think ABCs, I think you'll get a great foundation.
When it comes to individuals or an
Mhm.
organization, how does executive coaching really benefit them? Do you feel?
Yeah, I think, and most leaders have told me this as well. The higher up in an organization you move, the less likely you are to get feedback. And so you tend to be really isolated. And where individual coaching can come in is to provide that mirror, someone else to bounce things off of that's not going to teach you anything. I'm not there to mentor you or teach you. I'm there to help you discover what you already know and to help inspire you to change the direction of where you want to go. So I think individual coaching really helps people discover and take ownership of whether it's their career path or their leadership skills or relationships. Because
Hmm.
as a coach, I can stand up and say, so what do you think about that? Let's ask you some good questions. What are you doing? That allow the other person's brain to do all the machination. But
Right.
especially the higher up you go, you need to have someone in your life that's that trusted advisor that can objectively help you navigate
Hmm.
decisions. You just become too alone after a while.
Well, you do. And I think this pandemic has proven that with everybody working at home. I mean, look at my case. I mean, I have a lovely studio downtown. The pandemic crucified anybody wanting to come into it naturally. So, I had to revert to working back from home in my home studio.
Right.
But I can tell you, except for my little doggy, it gets very lonely and he doesn't like to have a drink with me.
Exactly. Exactly.
So if I had somebody, I mean, everywhere you look today, there are coaches. I mean, there
Mhm.
seems to be a dime a D, and you wonder, gee, how are they making a living if there are so many coaches? But there's coaches and coaches, isn't there? I mean, why do you think business storytelling then has become such a hot topic?
Oh, and it has too. Interesting about we talk about storytelling because storytelling has always been part of our lives. This is how we connect to each other. In fact, if you think about why is social media so powerful, because what are we doing? We're telling our stories with one another. And so telling stories is one of the most powerful ways to influence or teach or inspire others. However, somewhere along the line in business,
Mhm.
we started relying on data to tell our stories. Here's all this information. Here's all the stats. Here's all the charts and all the graphs. Meanwhile, not realizing that's information that appeals to the left side of our brain, which is all about structure and logic and order. It doesn't motivate us at all.
Mm.
So organizations are starting to recognize we need to stimulate the right side of people's brain. That's where emotion and imagination come in. Studies have proven that we as humans make decisions emotionally first, rationally second. So if we want to connect with people and help them to motivate to a better direction or to dive into a new product or a new way of living, we need to connect to their heart, their emotions, and that's where storytelling comes in because it attaches to our feelings, and that's why it's become so much more important. I think another side of this is also this the millennials. They're now moving into our organizational world. They are natural storytellers even more because of social media. So I think it's training them to tell better stories in a business environment
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
still feel appropriate and professional, but connect with their audience more impactfully.
Finally, I'd like to ask you this. What do you think that leaders can do to help their people thrive in this environment?
What a great question. I think you always have to ask yourself, what can I do to help them do better in their jobs? How can I teach them that they can walk through walls? I want people to feel, as a leader myself, I want them to challenge themselves. Don't limit. How can I inspire them to say, you can do this and there is no downside? There is no failure. It's just, well, we didn't make it work this time, but what did we learn from it? So I think, again, in terms of if they want to help their people thrive, help support that sense of innovation. Don't be afraid to say, I don't know. I think that's one of the greatest things that leaders can say is, I have no idea. So let's figure it out together. You know, leverage all the knowledge that's in the room and help your people to thrive that way. I think you're going to find you will build strong relationships of trust. You'll be authentic by saying, I don't know how to do this. That's why I hired you. So let's do this together. But yeah, I love to see leaders doing that. And I am so impressed with, again, these newer generations that are growing up to be leaders. I think they are just rock stars in terms of connecting emotionally with each other.
Well, there's no doubt about it, Marie. You're enthusiastic and it's catching. So that's wonderful. Folks, it's Marie Tjernlund, president of a leadership consulting firm, the leadership consulting firm in Gig Harbor, Washington. Her website, www.nobleedgeconsulting, all one, sentence, nobleedgeconsulting.com. Now, any other connections, Marie, for someone to get hold of you? Social media. By the way, folks, all this will be up still in the write-up on the site in the Mark Bishop Show, which is, of course, on markbishopmedia.com. And it'll be also distributed out to all the major podcast platforms around the globe. So what would you like as social media in there too, Marie?
Oh, that's fantastic. You can find Noble Edge on LinkedIn. You can find us on Facebook. My partner, Dr. Christopher Gilbert, who just is putting out his brand new book called The Noble Edge, Reclaiming an Ethical World One Choice at a Time. You can find him at Ethics Are Us on Twitter, so make sure you're finding him. But you can also find me on my Twitter. It's called Oh the Joy, which should also not really surprise you, knowing how I love life as well. Yes, you can find us on all the various social media channels. And I hope you do find us.
Do me a little favor, and everything you just shared, then jot it down in a quick email for me, would you?
I certainly will.
Because I want to make
so
sure
much.
I get it up on the site so anybody can contact you. Well, look, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've thoroughly enjoyed interviewing you. You're great to talk with, and I think you've got some very clever, direct points that people should really think about to where we're going in the wonderful world of business today. And no wonder you're successful, you and your husband, in what you do. You've got some of the biggest companies in America that you do consult to. So it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you, Marie, and I wish you all the luck in the world.
Thank you so much, Mark. What a joy to be here. I really appreciate it.
Okay. Goodbye now.